Today we're going to be showing you how to install a loaded strut assembly. In this video, we'll install these Duralast loaded strut assemblies in a 2011 Nissan Sentra. And we're going to install shocks in the rear for a complete suspension job. With the loaded strut assembly, you don't have to take the assembly apart to get to the strut. Instead of taking an old assembly out, then removing just the spring from the strut, you get to put in this whole new assembly. That's a new strut mount, insulator, dust boot, new coil spring, and the strut itself. In this loaded strut assembly, that's all in one piece. It's a faster, safer, and easier install to improve your ride control. You can do this job safely at home with hand tools. To do the job right, you'll need a torque wrench and 32mm deep well socket. You can borrow both of these from AutoZone with Loan-A-Tool. 16mm deep socket, 13mm deep socket, 10mm deep socket, a socket extender, 21mm socket, 19mm socket, 14mm socket, and 12mm socket, a punch, a 3/8 ratchet, a 1/2 inch drive breaker bar, a 13/16 inch or 21mm combo wrench, a 3/4 inch or 19mm combo wrench, a 7/16 inch or 11mm combo wrench, 12mm or 1/2 inch combo wrench, a pair of pliers, some wire cutters, a flathead screwdriver, a 1/2 inch drive ratchet, a mallet, and some safety gloves and goggles. You'll also need a hydraulic jack and some jack stands. This install requires a little bit of prep work. One of the top strut bolts on each side is inaccessible due to this cowl cover. We're going to need to remove the cowl cover before we do anything else. Lift the hood and then remove the plastic caps from the base of the windshield wipers. Use a socket and a ratchet to remove the retaining nut, then pull the arm off the spline shaft. Slowly take out the rubber lining. Move down the length of the lining and feel for where it is attached to the cowl, then slowly remove it from the attached areas. Remove the clips holding the cowl in place. You can use a screwdriver to get this started. Be careful when removing the pins, they can break easily. Carefully slide the cowl sections off. Set this to the side. Now we can access the hidden bolts and are ready to get started. Use a hydraulic jack to raise the vehicle slightly. Refer to your owner's manual for the correct position to jack the car. Break the lug nuts before raising the vehicle completely. Raise the vehicle with the jack, then insert a jack stand at a secure area of the vehicle's frame. Remove the lug nuts and the wheel. Take out the cotter pin from the axle, then remove the axle nut. You may need a punch to tap the axle splines loose. There is a wheel speed sensor and brake line connected to the strut. We'll need to remove these. Remove the sway bar link nut. Use a rust penetrant like PB Blaster if it's rusty. Now loosen the lower nuts and bolts on the strut. Once these bolts are removed, the bottom of the strut and wheel assembly will be free to move some, so be careful. Loosen the upper bolts. Remove the first two bolts, then secure the strut assembly before removing the third bolt. You may need a second person to hold the assembly in place once the third bolt is off. This may require some wiggling. Because you're installing a loaded strut, you can just start installing the new assembly. Line up the top studs and start installing the top bolts. Start by securing one top bolt to hold the strut in place, then install the other bolts. Install the bottom bolts and nuts and tighten. Install the sway bar link nut. Install the wheel speed sensor and brake hose. Put the axle nut back in place and torque to factory specifications. You may need a pair of pliers for this. Install the wheel and tire and put on the lug nuts. Lower the car to where the wheel is just touching, then tighten the lug nuts to 80 foot-pounds of torque. Follow the same steps to install a new assembly on the driver's side before replacing the wiper cowl. The cowl has a plastic lip that slides onto the windshield. Locate the lip, line it up with the edge of the glass, and carefully slide the plastic pieces onto the windshield. Replace the plastic clips, rubber weather strip, and plastic pins. Attach the wiper arms to their spline shaft. Make sure they are in the same position as before. Replace the plastic caps at the base of the wiper arms. Installing the rear shocks doesn't require a full assembly and is relatively simple. Raise the car following the same procedures as the front. Jack up car, brake nuts, jack-up car, secure with jack stand. Remove the lug nuts in the tire. Place the jack underneath the lower control arm for support before removing the bolts. Remove the top bolt from the shock. Remove the bottom bolt. Remove the shock. Install the new shock to replace the old one. Start by putting the top bolt in to hold the shock in place. Line up the bottom of the shock, insert the lower bolt, and tighten. On the driver's side of this vehicle, you need to go over the top of the exhaust system to reach the top bolt. Simply use a socket wrench extension to reach the top bolt on the driver's side. Replace the wheel like you did on the front. Repeat on the driver's side using the extension for the top bolts. Enjoy your new suspension.